Hey friends, it's Jeff. As many of you know, we've begun releasing all our best material at aroundthecircle.org. That includes not only the draft of our upcoming book for you to see, but the second half of our conversations with the most informed people we know. Posted already are our deep dives into 6s, 7s, and 8s. The second half of our new conversation, our 20 questions conversation with the Joey Schewee. And on January 1st, we will launch our deep dive into 9s with Beth McCord. As we have said before, those who sign up before Christmas will get an autographed copy of our upcoming book and the sheer delight and knowledge that they're supporting great Enneagram content into the new year. So go to aroundthecircle.org for the rest of the Joey Schewee interview, get a book, and may all good things be yours. I'm Jeff Cook.
And I'm TJ Wilson.
And this is Around the Circle.
I'm walking slowly, I'm taking my time. All I could talking is starting to rhyme. I'm letting go of lonely, letting go of strife. I just can't get enough of this beautiful life.
The Enneagram is a map of the human personality. It's a tool for navigating relationships. It creates language for what motivates us and helps us look at the way we look at everything else. Most importantly, the Enneagram's a mirror because sometimes you need help seeing yourself. My name is Jeff Cook. I'm a longtime professor of philosophy in Greeley, Colorado. With me is TJ Wilson, coffee guru, lover of theology, and Enneagram ninja.
Hello.
My man.
Hey.
We get to play 20 questions with one of our favorite people in the world.
Hooray.
The great Joey Schewee is with us again, and it seems, for me, I don't know if you have this experience, TJ, but nearly every time we get done talking with Joey, I have 28 questions that I kick myself for not getting a chance to ask. So, I'm going to catch up on them question asking today.
Well, and we'll see, because my experience is usually that I come with questions, and then Joey just derails all of my questions and gives me something new to think about, so...
Leave with more than you started from. New things going on in the life of Joey Schewee, though. There apparently is a book draft that must be completed soon.
Yeah, December 15th, turning it in.
Does said book have a release date?
Not that they've given me yet. So this is new to me, but I was told 12 to 14 months after I turn it in. And you know, I always think about I'm faster than modern medicine. I want to be faster than modern book publishing dates. You know, I really want this to come out in 25. So
boom, it's the artists. They have to wait on the artists. I had a book called 7 that was going to get released in 2007. Nope, missed the deadline. It was 2008. Perfectionist that I am. You can see how that would make me itchy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're going to play 20 questions with Joey. TJ and I have come with 10 questions. Joey has as well. And we're just going to shotgun questions at each other and see what happens. All right, so we're going to turn the mic over to you. Joey, do you have things on your mind? I have no idea what sort of Enneagram questions you would actually bring up. So I'm actually more curious about the style and type of question than...
They're all over the place. I mean, literally all over the place.
Ready.
So... all right. Number 1, to both of you. Only the last 2 is to one and the other. So to both of you, what stereotypes about your number bother you the most?
You want to go?
I think mine is actually the affable nature of 9s. Because I see other people, other 9s that I know that are, you know, they get along with everyone. And like, yeah, they are, you know, generally positive, affable people. And I know my own insides, and I know that is not my nature. Like being agreeable is not what's going on inside my head. It might be the case that I am unaware of how I'm perceived and that I'm perceived that way. But man, I am capable of high levels of judgment, and that is not how 9s are presented. So that's my one big one. But I also, maybe it's just me. I don't really care.
But I'll be affable in the end.
Yeah, that's fine.
Primary one for me is perfectionist. I'm a perfectionist about the term perfectionist. So this is an unfortunate entry point into this, but it seems to me the more that we've gotten into this, there's a line of thinking on body types that it's about the spaces. We're intuitive about the spaces, and when the idea of perfectionism comes in, what I've started to think about in my own experience is that what's actually taking place is I'm just very aware, hyper aware of the right now. I'm not necessarily needing to perfect anything. What I am needing is to feel comfortable in a way that's going to make sense to me at this point in time. That may have to do with a whole host of things, from how my room feels to the work that I'm doing. And the perfectionism that comes across like in intellectual tasks is much more about not being judged. There is a self-judgment, but more than anything, I think it's I want to do things in such a way as to escape my own judgment and the judgment of others, which brings up the second one, which is I think that the language around inner critics needs to be reevaluated. I don't know what other ones experience is. I've listened to a handful of interviews recently, and I get the sense that the one is actually saying what the Enneagram teacher told them their inner critic is. I feel like there needs to be a reevaluation of what's taking place with inner critic and inner criticism, because I don't hear a voice.
Yeah.
And I imagine that other people do. Like I can see, I know what it's like to kind of have a voice paired with inner criticism, but I don't think that's what's going on. I think there's something else going on. And it's, again, I think it has to do with our thinking repression, and it has to do with our hyper focus on the present. And again, that mixture of not wanting to be judged. All of this kind of creates a messy soup.
I like your point about, what the inner critic really is, because when I hear you talk, it aligns with my vision of what the inner critic is. And what I've always said is your inner critic is not there to critique what you're going to do or what you're feeling or what you're thinking. It is solely there to criticize what you've already done.
So that's what I experienced as well. And I really want to put my thumb on that. And I want to put and say this is important, because that is a stress move. It's a past oriented point. Like I seldom feel inner criticism about the present moment, and I seldom feel resentment about the present moment either. So both resentment, which comes up with one's inner criticism, it feels like this is more in the past, which means I am starting to try to associate it with a stress move.
And to build on what I'm saying, it's always there, because if you've done something, you're thinking of how you could have done it better, and you're not living in stress. So I think in tandem with what you're saying, I think we really need to pull up that understanding that it's a support. It is what supports your doing all day, every day. And it's not a specific stress move.
Yeah, that's fair. Go ahead.
I think that helps us. There's this thing that I feel the urge every time we talk about the inner critic, because I know a handful of people, and I'm sure there are more out there. I know some people who think that they are ones because their really mean dad is always in the back of their head telling them all of the things that he told them when they were children. Yep. And I think that when we talk about the inner critic, that might be what we're talking about. But what we should be talking about is that companion that's always like, it's not necessarily a voice. It's not Waldorf and Astoria. It's not this, it's not someone telling you what you've done wrong. It's the way that you process all of it. And yeah, there's got to be something. I think you're right, Jeff. I think we need to figure out a better way to talk about the inner critic than saying the inner critic,
because we all have self-talk.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
The mixture for me, I suppose, it would be something like, one, I'm not. It's anti my stance. I'm not earning something, and it's my thinking repression. Like, you mix those two together, and I bet you're going to get a little bit more of the critic.
Yeah.
That was terrible. Oh. It's a good Muppet shout out there.
Well, that or Charles Barkley, either one.
Oh,
Terrible. All right, so this kind of leads. I wanted to say something that based on what TJ said, but I'm going to actually weave it into my third question and move that into number 2. And that is, where do y'all stand on Enneagram and nature versus nurture?
Ooh, we're split on this.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm all in on nature. I think that it's very, very early, and I don't think nurture does much. I think there's a lot of wiring. My reason for that is that I think your primary center is how you take in the world. Even for a very young infant, they're still bringing in the world in a certain way that's filtered, as it were. And I think that's probably primary. How they respond to the world may be something that comes a little bit later. But I'm also not, I'm not a specialist in early childhood development or anything like that. But that's my intuition.
Okay.
Yeah, my intuition is that every single question that asks nature versus nurture is always yes.
Both.
And there's just no possible way for us to separate those two things clearly enough to ever really answer it. So,
are y'all familiar with my mom's story about where her stance on nature versus nurture and how it shifted? So starting out, she said 50-50, like it was, but that was based on her own experience, and her own experience being born to a teenage mother in the panhandle of Texas in 1950, when she was adopted by my grandfather who delivered her. And people would say to her, everyone in the town knew she was, where they lived, knew she was adopted. Her older brothers were 16 and 18. And so her childhood was filled with comments like, Suzanne, those are the cutest red shoes. Had you ended up in that orphanage in Paducah, you wouldn't have red shoes. Aren't you lucky that Doc and Sue adopted you, right? Or you play the piano so well, those orphans in Paducah aren't getting piano lessons. Aren't you lucky that Doc and Sue adopted you? And so for her, it was like, of course I'm going to be a 2 because I'm just lucky to be here, right? But she would always contradict herself 30 years ago, because she would then bring me up and she would say, now, if Joey had been born to Doc and Sue Guthrie in 1950 in Floydada, and someone said to me, aren't you lucky that Doc and Sue adopted you? She said, Joey would likely look at them and say, shoot, they're lucky to get me. And so she ultimately shifted, and she believes, and Billy aligns with her. My husband aligns with her that it is nature. They align with you, Jeff. It is pretty much nature.
Yeah, I would love to build on that. That the fact that the comments about her shoes are what stand out to her is 100% the filter that she has. Yeah. So of all things, and I can cut this if necessary, but like when she brings up her adoption, like she feels abandoned and unwanted, but that's what's arising in her heart. But not all adopted kids feel that way.
Yeah.
Like many of them have different kinds of experiences of their adopted, but it's the filter that says, what is my priority? What is it that is most valuable and important about my past?
That's interesting. I'm only going to bring mine in because you touched on it with ones. My theory is not that you're born in a triad, but that you're born in a stance. I believe what is predetermined is your reference point. I think it's the reason we can recognize stance easier in young children than we can anything else. And I think it's clear if your reference point is independent, external, or internal. I think that's what's predetermined. And where I find that to be supported over and over is, while I've literally come across every possible combination of parent and child, overwhelmingly, I see more ones who had a 1 parent and 6s who had a 6 parent. Sure. I don't see it with 2s. But if you're born with an external reference point and your parent is one of those types in that stance, that's literally the nurture that's going to cause you to be that type. And so that it made me think of that when you were saying, so many ones, when they talk about the critic, it's their father, right? Or it's that parent figure that,
right.
And I find that's why 6s and ones. Billy and I have a cohort coming up in 2025, and we had lots of applications for it. We're very excited about it. And in about 40 applications, there were no applications for 6, because you tell your type in the application, and 8 applications for that said they were 8s. And I could literally tell
Wow.
reading the application that only 2 of them are 8s.
Oh, sure.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
Truly. And so what we're doing is we want you in the cohort, but this is a Joey Schewee cohort. Like, I'm not going to I'm going to call you out. So,
Right.
because this work is too important, to be going down the wrong path. And I had a 6 say to me, literally. So Billy and I did a little interview, and these were 2 sentences apart. So a sentence, 2 sentences, and then this sentence. She says, I really didn't. She identified as an 8. She said, I really didn't identify with fear because I questioned 6. 2 sentences later, she says, most 8s scare me.
Yeah. You're just
And
not
what
paying attention
her
to your fear.
biggest hurdle was that her mom is a 6. And she was like, I am not my mom. I'm not.
Mhm.
And so it ends up being a hurdle for 6s and 1s also, that they can't separate their parent from what they're also dealing with. And so they say, that's not me, ultimately. It's fascinating. Yeah.
I like it.
Okay. This was question number 2 that we're going back to. Do you believe that we can live in our secure move like we live in our stress?
I think you can, but it's not a healthy move.
Yeah, I like that.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And without any real data to back this up, I feel like living in stress is like this terrible bottom location. Like, this is, if people are living in stress, it's because there's something seriously wrong that they can't get back to center, right? And so if they're living in security, then like that is not a balanced way to live. That is like the 7ist, like the most unhealthy 7 kind of thing to do, is to ignore balance and to just live in this place. And then that's where you become a villain.
Yep.
Yep.
Yay. I love it.
Yeah, to build on this, I would even want to go so far as to say I think probably the most destructive teaching in some Enneagram circles would be the prescriptive idea that you ought to live in your security number. You can get hurt. You can get really hurt in that space if you are consistently trying to be in that space.
And I think it's balanced. So I agree with you too. I think in order to live in it in a healthy space, you're just balanced. You're not in that space. So, All right. This is a question that I like to ask on panels, and it's one that I find harder and harder to answer the more Enneagram work I do. So I'm just going to throw it out for the 2 of you. What Enneagram type is most foreign to you? So not the type that you don't like, not the time that you have the hardest time with, the type that I cannot connect with that type. I can't get on the same wavelength as that type. Which type is the most foreign to you?
Oh, like foreign as I don't understand them, or foreign in terms of I can't connect to them?
I think can't connect, because I'm assuming you guys kind of understand every number generally. Yeah. You've done so much good work around this.
The number that's most confusing to me is 2s, because I don't feel like they give me what's actually underneath, because oftentimes they don't understand what's underneath. The number that I have the hardest time connecting to is 7s, because 7s, I don't ever feel like most 7s care about me.
Yeah, I like that.
I'm not sure that I have an answer for this, but I think that's because I'm a 9.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't really would have an answer. Yeah.
I have a harder time with people who are unhealthy than anything else.
There you go.
Or I should say people who have little to no self-awareness.
There it is.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to use higher functioning, lower functioning more and more, because I think it's less to push against, but yeah, lower functioning for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you got an answer for that one, Joey?
It used to be 6, hands down. It was 6. Like, I don't fear anything. How can you fear everything? All the things. My mom teases that in her early years of teaching, when she got to sixes, that's like, and she noticed it. I, of course, didn't notice it, but that's when I would get up and take my break. Like, that's when I would leave the room.
Because you were sitting in the back.
Yeah. Anyway.
Next to the exit door.
And then I just kept coming across two things in my travels and in my teaching. So many 6-8 combos of friends who were really deep friends, 6 and 8. And then I just started coming across more and more 6s who I just really think the world of. And so I honestly don't have a number that I would say is the most foreign to me. I've been really damaged isn't the word, hurt isn't the word, but 3s have not been great for me. My theory is that 3s live through the lens of competitive comparison. And for most types, when they competitively compare, they can best that type. And it's a little bit harder when they come up against 8s.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a lower functioning 3 more often than not is going to intuitively sabotage in order to best. And I've been the recipient of that more than 2 times. So
yeah,
that's a thing for me. I kind of have I have a natural barrier up, I think.
That's a reminder to me that I need to spend some good energy thinking about 8s and 3s, because I see that 8s and 8s and 4s have all of these problems, but there's some really close connection when you get down to it. And 8s and 3s I see can be the biggest struggle. Yeah.
And I don't see it. I love that you brought that up specifically, because I don't see it with 5s and 9s, but I do see it with 3s and 8s and with 2s and 6s. So the 3, 6, 9, when you shift to process with a preferred center, there's an alignment of stance and processing center that happens with 3s and 8s, with 5s and 9s, and with 2s and 6s. And I see that clear struggle more with 2s and 6s. I've experienced it with 3s, but I haven't really seen much with 5s and 9s, but there is something to those 3 pairs that I think is interesting.
Yeah. Interesting. I like it.
All right. I don't know that if we've talked about this, I don't remember. What are y'all's takes on wings?
You want to go?
They're there. They might be flavoring, but yeah.
I'm really looking forward to doing work on balance. In fact, that may be a bigger project. And I think wings come into that. But I think wings especially come in when we talk about the places we struggle. So I actually do feel sloth, and I do feel the pride of my wings. And so that's, I suppose, where I first identify, okay, there's something there. And I imagine that there's something about elevating the strengths, as it were, of those types that I can pull from as well, that I'd be curious to see if that's not something worth, when talking about balance overall and really pulling from what's all around you. That strikes me as something worthy.
And if one of your wings is adding so much flavor that you're starting to be more like the wing, that is a significant representation of your unbalance.
Right. I line with you, TJ. I always have said I think it dresses up behavior, but it's because it doesn't touch core motivation. We can waste a lot of time in wings. And I've always said, when you think of it visually, if you can't go deep with something, what do? You go wide with it. And that's where wings are. In the wind, right? And people tell me their type with a wing attached, that is almost always a certain clue to me that the teaching they have received has not been great.
That's exactly it. It got put into the language early on. I mean, again, to call them out, but Riso and Hudson's book ends up going down that road of kind of elevating this as a subtype, as it were. So I think it is healthy to move off that.
Yeah. I am finding, because of not only my sister, but I have some very close friends who are all 9s with an 8 wing. That's the space I've historically said where it actually does matter. Like, it really doesn't matter anywhere, even with the 4-5 space. It doesn't really matter after you land on your type. But I do believe that a 9 with an 8 wing is a space that we're not giving enough airtime to. And it's because that's the only space where you have two dichotomously opposed motivations butting up against each other all the time. Conflict avoidant and conflict energizing is a thing. And so I learned with my sister, but I'm working with so many 9s with 8 wings in corporate who misidentified as 8s. That I call them spicy 9s, and they do seem to at least like that if I can get them, looking in that direction. But
I would be curious. I haven't. This is going to be a half-baked thought. I love the idea of the energy of our underlying feeling going both ways for 3, 6, 9s. The anger is going both ways for the 9s, the shame both ways for the 3s, etc. I would be really curious if there's not a dial, as it were, on this on someone who leans the 9 that leaves heavy toward the 8. If there's not just slightly more energy pushing outward than inward in that space, because I see this with my 3 wife. She very much is much more toward the 2 side, as it were, and in terms of gaining the attention that she wants, ends up going that way. I'd be curious if there's something, a bit of degree there. Anyway, half-baked thought.
I bet there is, and my language previously that has touched on that is I say 9s with an 8 wing come in hot.
Yeah. Yeah.
They come in so hot, and it's out of nowhere, and they can't sustain it, but man, do they come in hot. It's a thing.
Yeah. And I like that, like Suzanne brings up the 3 with a 4 wing.
That's another
within that same idea, because the 3s it's naturally performative, and the 4s are trying to be authentic, and that can be in opposition sometimes.
True. It doesn't outwardly show like it does, though. I used to say I used to add 3 with a 4 in there. It certainly doesn't show up in a confusing way. Like,
I wonder if you'd say the same thing if you worked with more artists than corporate settings.
I wonder. Yeah, that's a great thought for sure.
I could name 2, 3 with a strong 4 wing people that I know that it was a struggle to get their type.
I'd be curious how much instincts play on this with the 3, 4 wing. Like, it's just the person in my mind, they're just very self-preserving in that 3, 4. The 4-ness comes in that self-preservative space in my mind. Maybe that's a wrong move there, but
no, I like that. I the way I've always considered it is it's honestly, I use 3 with a 4 wing to say that it's still just dressing up behavior. So it's not that big a deal, because my language has always been, it's not going to affect your motivation. A 3 with a 4 wing is still going to adjust. They're just more self-aware that they're adjusting, but it's not going to change that they adjust.
That's again, like the ability to look inwardly more is what I see there for the I suppose the 3s that I'm associating with this person. They're just, the energy inward is just much higher than the energy outward.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. Yeah. I have to say it here, whether we use it or not, my favorite story that I teach with when I'm talking about 9s with an 8 wing is I did some work with a company, and I was working with a leadership team. So picture this leadership team. You've got a 9 who is identifying as an 8, a 1, a 3, and a 5. So a lot of doers, right? A lot of task focus, a lot of doers. It's clear to me that the person who is identifying as an 8 is a 9. At one point in the conversation, I say, "Does everybody like you?" He says, "I don't know about that." The 1 pops up immediately. Yes. So the resentment's coming, right? That this 9 who isn't getting as much done as the 1 is, everyone likes them, right? So I say, we're going to work again tomorrow. Will you go home and do me a favor and just listen to this podcast with my sister? And he goes home, and it's my 9 with an 8 wing sister talking about feeling like Batman and Robin. Like, she's like, I got both, man. Yeah. I'm coming to work every day as Batman and Robin. I'm Robin, but I've got some Batman in me. And And if Batman needs a day off, all the things, I'm there. So I say to this young man, tell me what you think. And he was like, well, I listened to it. My wife and I listened to it together. And at the end, I asked my wife, am I Batman or Robin? And he said, Joey, my wife said that I'm Batman. And I said, Batman doesn't have to ask his wife if he's Batman. I think we need to look at 9, man.
And yeah, I love that story. And like if I were in a similar situation, like there's a whole step that I feel like you could have skipped a lot of the like your answer to the same question as a dyed in the wool 8 is right. I don't care what other people
you think. Exactly.
Does everyone like me? I don't care.
When I question people who think they're an 8 and their first move is to go talk to other people, I'm like, not an 8,
Nope.
Yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing. Okay. This is a question. I'm just curious. It's not one I like because it doesn't apply to me, but I'm curious. If you could be another number, would you? And what would it be?
I don't know that I would. Because again, sitting at the top of the Enneagram here, I could see all of your problems. There's everything that's good about all the rest of you. Man, it comes with some stuff.
Yeah, I wouldn't change. That's probably a very 8 answer, but
I would love to take on some of the positives of some of the other numbers, but I see their struggles, and I'm like, oh, that's. Yeah. Done enough work on my own struggles. Yeah. But I am most attracted to 3s and 8s, and this probably comes out of the action processing that 3s and 8s can often do their ability to get things done. I see as often much, they have higher skills on that than I do. So yeah, envious of some of the abilities there.
That's fascinating because I wouldn't think it's a skills issue. I just see it as a no feelings connected to it issue.
There is a strength there. There's a skill. It's maybe not a skill.
We have stone hearts.
You don't have the limitation of empathy.
Right. There you go. Okay, big. I'm trying to go kind of big and then smaller. So here's a bigger one.
Love it.
What do you see as generational shifts? What do you see that meaning something for Enneagram?
Oh, heck yeah. Like everything is changing, and we're unaware of how severely it's changing because we're in the middle of it. Like there's entire generations in our pasts that didn't ever talk about mental health, right? And there's I know people who regularly text with their therapist. Like it's very different than it was 50 years ago. And as the generations keep, evolving, then there's going to be different ways that we're looking at this.
Yeah. Is that what you mean? Like the difference between boomers and X and
Y
and
Z?
Chain?
Yeah.
I lose people want to go down this, but it's just the thing that's so dominant when I look at it as a philosopher is that just the movement from the modern to the postmodern is all over this. And that is, we're looking at things objectively, and there's the turn in postmodernity to the subjective. So there's here are the facts is what everybody knows. Here are our shared values, to just hyper individualized experiences of the world. The fact that Enneagram has risen up at this point in time, really in what I assume was like, early 90s-ish, like late 80s, this is part of the turn towards subjectivity, because the question is, how do you see the world? What is your motive? How is it that you interpret things and then come to the world, in response? So what I think is likely going to happen is that you move from a World War II generation where everybody is in this one task and your opinion does not matter. We are doing this. And then the baby boom generation, emerges. The sexual revolution, drug culture, and the rest are so significant because it's the first questioning of that collective. And then you move to X, which has slightly more, as you get to millennials, Y, and the rest, to the place where we are now, that is just so hyper individualized. And I think we're going to hit, it's a pendulum. I think you're going to hit something and probably swing back. And it's like, all right, where are we finding commonality? And obviously that's where our culture is really in pain right now, is where are we sharing an identity with other Americans, but globally as well. And so, but Enneagrams are really important there in terms of its language that really gives you language for talking about your inner life and in probably that healthy spot,
I love
you
all
should
of
be
that.
able to talk about your inner life.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I touched on it for briefly. It's top of mind because I touched on it in my book when I was looking at threes. And in the midst of the strained relationship I have with threes, I have some threes that are just absolutely dear to me and rock stars in my life, that I consult with, and that I've just gotten, I'm with their companies quarterly, and I've gotten to really know them. And they're self-reflective, and anything I throw at them, they're not denying it. They're taking it in and giving me more. And it's just so refreshing. And two of them are in Louisiana working for two different companies. And one company is boomer and Gen X heavy, and the other has no boomers or Gen Xers. It is all it's all millennials and Z. The three, and there's a gap. There's a 16-year gap between the two of them. But it's so fascinating to me that the older one, working for the older generation company, he's risen in the ranks very easily. The younger one, with all the same high functioning health, like she's a rock star. She's being told at every turn, you got to earn your stripes. You got to pay your dues.
Right.
And a big aha for me, that's not going to affect the two of you like it is me and my type. I think those of us who are more comfortable with autonomy, 3s, 7s, and 8s, and 5s. So those of us who work more autonomously, what used to promote us is in fact going to hurt us in corporate, because of the shift to leadership by committee. And that whole idea of autonomy is not okay necessarily. I think there's going to be something coming there.
The question I didn't ask you, but it brings it up, is I would think that the instincts play heavily into your work. And I don't know if you do much work on instincts, but that's what I hear as you're talking, is like, how does the social instinct kick in organizations, and even how do organizations get fashioned by, whatever the personality is of those who are creating I'm a bonding sexual type. My entrepreneurial risk-taking side is very high. I fail in corporate environments.
When I bring in instincts in corporate, it's management style. I don't, I think people can misuse instincts almost like they misuse wings. We kind of talked about this, where I think the greatest thing that instinct awareness gives us is how we differ from the same type. I think where it overreaches and when we use instinct to say, this is why we're like a different type that's not our type. Like, I think you're getting too far out of the bounds of what its purpose is. But I really love using it in terms of management style. So that's where I hit it in corporate for sure. Like, you have a preferred management style based on your instinct, and you manage based on your instinct.
Yes.
So
yeah,
I like that.
Yeah.
I suppose that's exactly what I wanted to drive toward.
Yeah.
And so I think that would be really edifying.
Yay. Okay. This one's just for you, Jeff. If Billy says, and I love this language, my 9 husband says that 4s, 5s, and 9s need to stop stopping. Okay. But everybody else needs to stop. We need to find our stop. We need to look for our stop. That's been so formative for my work to find balance, is creating intentional stops in my life, which stop in my language, means solitude and introspection. And so I'm just curious, what does stopping look like for you?
Yeah, I assume that it would be real similar to yours because I suppose I'm gonna again elevate stress numbers because I associate my stopping with going. If I do it in a healthy spot, it looks like I'm going to the high side of 4, and I don't know if that would be the same for you, that you would go the high side of 5 when you stop, but that's normally where I land if I'm intentionally stopping. Or stopping can look like a security move.
Right.
Like I'm putting all of this away and I'm leaving, which is less frequent.
Okay, so I want you to be a little more basic with your answer, meaning I'm
Uh-huh.
telling all these numbers who aren't 4s, 5s, and 9s, you need to stop. You're not going to find balance unless you do. And they're saying to me,
Okay.
okay, cool. What does that look like? So it's
Yeah.
literally so stopping for me is walking my dog 3 miles every morning without a phone. Like that's my stop. What does stopping specifically look like for you
Ooh,
as a 1?
that doesn't sound active to you.
No, because I
that's
go
stopping.
intuitive. I go internal.
And you're not working.
Nope.
You can't be working at that point.
Nope.
Bang. I suppose mine is kind of active in a different kind of way. If I intentionally, it's still me being centered, but I would move towards like fixing a meal is very refreshing and feels like it's moving away from quote unquote like production. But it's still the case that comes out of that same space. It's not like it's uncomfortable for me to sit in a room silently.
I
But that
love
would
that.
be
So cooking for you. So you think that's it.
engaging the artistic. I mean, it's still a very body improving kind of action. So that doesn't sound like stopping as I'm saying it, but
I think they're active ways to stop. My point is I am always telling the types who are not 4s, 5s, and 9s that going to sleep is not stopping because there's no solitude and introspection happening. So stopping doesn't necessarily mean physically stopping, but it does mean what are you doing to get away from the distracting parts of your core type and go inside. And when I hear cooking, I
yeah.
mean, there's not really a perfect way to cook a meal, right? So I love that there's some allowance, at least I think there is.
Yeah. No, you know what takes place there? Here actually goes closer to what you're saying. In those spaces, it's one of the few times I actually listen to music, and that's actually a feeding, that's a receiving.
Mhm.
That's what stopping would look like for me. It's being in spots where I'm not producing, but I am receiving, and I don't actually receive very often.
Yeah.
In ways that are like are that are quality. There's a lot of quantity receiving, but really like enjoying quality receiving is few and far between, and it would look something like that.
I love it. All right, TJ, your question.
Hit me.
9s think very little of what they do by nature,
Mm-hmm.
but I think all 9s have this space where they know it's theirs to do and that they're good at it. What is that for you?
I am in a community surrounded by artists, and when I look at a blank canvas, I see a blank canvas. I can't. I'm an okay musician, but I have never been able to write something. I don't create in that way, even though I'm like all of the people that I know and love are creators. And several years ago, I realized that like the thing that I say to get people who tell me that I'm not an artist to leave me alone is that my art is in creating spaces where other people's art can be best experienced. So I am a really good production manager for productions, for events that like I'm not going to coordinate catering and parking. Like I'm not good at that part, but the parts where like somebody is going to be giving a presentation that themselves have made artful, I'm going to be able to make that presentation as good as it can be experienced. The space in which I create great coffee, I'm not growing beans. I don't know much about growing beans. I'm not roasting. That's not what I want to do. what I'm really good at is creating this one specific space with this really good beverage and this really good experience, because that, like, creating the space where other people's great work gets to be experienced as best as it can be. That's one thing that I'm exceptionally good at.
I love it. Great answer. Well said.
Thanks.
Great questions.
Thanks.
This was fantastic. That was exactly. I've been lacking language for what we want, and this worked out fantastically. So I'm incredibly grateful, Joey.
Thank you for the opportunity. I love connecting with you guys.
Likewise. So, friends, this is just the first half of our conversation with Joey. In the second half, TJ and I asked Joey an hour's worth of all new questions. Members can get the second half at aroundthecircle.org alongside many more hours of our content, video, and access to our book. So go to aroundthecircle.org, and it would mean the world to us if you share this episode with somebody you care about, preferably somebody who wants to jump into some depthier conversation about Enneagram. You can find all of the links to all of our stuff at aroundthecircle.org. And Joey, you're doing fantastic stuff. What should people know about you in 2025?
Hopefully the book's coming. With the book, Enneagram Teacher will be revived. That is my, right now I'm doing everything through Enneagram Parents. And so it's not just parenting, it's all kinds of things. But I'm excited for my book release, because I think there's a lot to be done to stretch ourselves with this amazing wisdom. And so I'm excited.
Excellent. Well, that's what I got. You got anything else, CJ?
I got nothing, man.
CJ Wilson, he's officially awesome. Joey Schewee, you are a treasure to us. And I'm Jeff Cook, and who you aren't just isn't interesting. That was only 2 hours long.
I know we're not
five.
going into, it's not out. It's still light outside.
So,
And I almost
me
said
laugh.
bang like 5 times. Just when y'all were giving answers.
Yeah.
So
contagious.
you're rubbing off.